How many times have you come to the end of a tune only to realize you have no idea how to end it and you just sort of stop? Or you resort to the same cliche ending for almost every tune. The ending is the last impression that your audience has of your song, so it's essential to finish strong. In this video, I'll show you how. I'm Dr. George with Jumpstart Jazz Guitar for busy adults. Everything you need to know without all the noise. Before we get started, I'd like to thank all of the new subscribers. If you have any suggestions or requests for topics, please leave a comment down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Just click the button down below. And of course, please like and share the video. Endings are the last thing people hear, but they're often the last thing musicians think about. I know that was true for me. I learned a couple of endings and thought, that's good enough. But playing the same ending for every song can get pretty boring for both you and the audience. So today I'm going to show you some of my favorite ways to end a song. They're not that hard, and it'll make you sound like a pro. Now, most endings have two parts, the tag and the cadence. Let's take a look at tags first. Now, a tag is a repeated section at the end of a song that usually using part or all of the last four bars. The simplest tag repeats the last four bars. Let's look at Autumn Leaves. Another variation is to add a turnaround chord or chords to take us back to the beginning of the tag. Let's look at like Satin Doll. And then sometimes you just add a secondary dominant or a 2/5 to get you there. The most common tag uses the first two measures of the last four. In the simplest form, we just repeat those measures one or two times before resolving to one. Let's look at like Days of Wine and Roses. Another common variation that's used is when the two measures contain a 2/5, and then we repeat that measure, but we go up a whole step. And then there's one last variation that's pretty well known in Fly Me to the Moon. And that's where you go up a minor third instead of just a whole step. Now let's take a look at some cadences. Now what I'm defining cadence as being a sequence of chords that resolves to the final chord, usually the tonic, and this will occur after the tag. Now the simplest one is one that you probably use plenty of times, is just to resolve to the one. You do something a little bit rhythmic and that can make it just work. And you can also do a retard. Probably the most famous ending and probably the most cliche ending is the A train ending. So you're going. You start on 1, you jump down to the 3, go up chromatic, and then you're going to skip the flat 7, go to the 7. Another ending that works really well is to move up to the 5 chromatically. And then resolving down to 1. One that I use fairly often is a walk down to the 5 too. So we can walk up, we can walk down. And these are all dominant 7th chords. And it could even the first one could be a dominant 7, but if it's and again the chromatic approach there. Cool little ending that we don't hear very often is the Basie ending. And what that is it's a 2 chord going to a sharp 2 diminished chord and then going to a 1 chord in first inversion. But really all that's happening is that you're just moving these 2 notes and then you keep the tonic up at the top. So it goes, and then you hit the bass note at the end. The Plagal Cadence is simply 1-4-1. And it's often used in ballads, so Georgia. With a retard can work really nicely. And a variation on that is to follow that 4 chord with a 4 minor chord. So something like. It's kind of old school. I don't use that one very often. A fun ending is the LadyBird ending. And that comes from Tad Dameron's song LadyBird. And so it starts on a 1 chord, and then it uses all borrowed chords. Flat 3, flat 6, flat 2, 1. All major 7th chords. The delayed cadence is where you play a 2-5, and then instead of going to 1, you go to another chord, usually the flat 2. That can work really nice because if the melody note is the tonic of the key, that's going to be the major 7 of the flat 2 chord. So it goes something like this. Another simple ending that can be very effective is the chromatic approach. And it's kind of the reverse of the delayed resolution. So you use the same chord, just go down a half step. Now you can also do that as a double chromatic approach. The vamp is a pattern of 2 or 3 chords at the end of a song that we just repeat, and often somebody will be improvising over the top of it. It's really common on Latin tunes, so let's look at Corcovado. And that can go on as long as you want it to. Another common vamp would be just simply a 2-5. That would happen at the end of Wave, another Jobim tune. The fill and the stinger are a pretty easy one to also do. What you do is basically you get to the 1 chord, you hit it hard and break. There's a fill, and then you add 1 more chord at the end. So. Works really nice. nicely on blues, but you can use it on just about anything. The last one is the cadenza. And the cadenza comes from classical music. In a concerto, they get to a break where the soloist will play their improvised solo, or maybe not improvised anymore. And so we do kind of the same thing. It's often done with a ballad, and it's often done with a singer. And we basically just... You hold the 5 chord and let them do their thing. And then you might even use the Deceptive. A simple resolution like that. So the last thing we should talk about is the last chord. It's often a rich chord with a lot of different colors to it. I mean, it could be, if it's a major chord, it could simply be a major 7 chord, and sometimes that's really appropriate. But other times you might want to add a 6th or a 13th to that, or even a 6th, a 13th, and a 9th. And then if you want something a little darker, the major 7 sharp 11. Got to be careful with that one too, though, because often the singers aren't singing that one. Now, one last one that can be really interesting is this chord. And it sounds kind of like a 6-9 chord with a sharp 11 on it, but in fact what it is it's a dominant 7th, a D7 chord with a C in the bass. It's really pretty. Now for minor chords, of course, minor 7th is okay, and minor 9. That's going to give it a little bit of a modal character to it. If you want it to really sound like tonic minor, you need to be using a minor 6 chord. Or, if you want it darker, then the minor major 7th chord. And sometimes I like to do that with a bass player playing this. Good soap opera chord, okay? And then finally, there's two other chords. If you're ending on a blues or you want something bluesy, the 7 flat 5. So if we've been playing blues, but my favorite blues chord ending is this one. And that also works on a variety of different tunes. Gives you nice, lots of interesting colors there. It's a 13 sharp 9 chord. And it's pretty easy to remember. As you can see, it's just a straight diagonal there. Combining these tags and cadences will give you enough different possibilities that you could use a different ending on every song in your gig. So be sure to practice them, try them out on different songs. Certain endings will work with some songs and they won't feel so great. So make sure you try out more than one. But there really are no rules. It's all up to you. And these are just a start. You can make up your own, you can vary the chords, you can add in tritone substitutions and more. The possibilities are really quite endless. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. And if you'd like to dig a little deeper, you can sign up for a free online lesson with me. There's no obligation. Just click the link in the description below. See you next time.